information and maybe even some money as well. You need to consider the widest community interest, impact, and benefit of that research as well. And many of the indigenous peoples who do the research are always seemingly going back and thinking, I'm doing this for my people. I'm not doing this for myself. I'm not gaining any honor for myself. I'm getting this and making sure that my people have it. And so a lot of the research that's going on among indigenous peoples today are of that caliber. And I'm really pleased and have read so many wonderful pieces that people are coming from that particular perspective. And of course, that ethical space of dialogue and negotiation needs to continue with the researchers. Now, when you're done with that research, it's important that I say that you need to give back to the communities and participants the products. Now, they might not be just the thesis themselves, or it might be that you bring back a newsletter that's in a language that can be understood by the group. It might be translated in the local language. It might be put in a DVD so that people can share it on the channel. Might have a cable channel that they could share. So there's multiple ways that can be shared, but it needs to come back to the community. People need to know what has been happening with the knowledge that they have out there. And then they need to get feedback on the outcomes, that just when you have finished your thing, is that where it ends? Or do you go back to the community and you say, well, this is what I have, what I've found out. What do you think we need to do with it next? How do we take this up? What should be the next step? Is there another process that you'd like to have us go through? How do we then use this in a good way? And then when you have that research done, you don't just go out and take it to the media and say, Eureka, look what we found in this little primitive community that I went to. Rather, you go back to the community and you say, can I use this? Can I put it in a book? Can I put it on the news? How would you like for me to share it with the world? Can I share it with the world? Is it appropriate for me to share it? And what parts of it do you think I should share? And then, maybe even more importantly, you say, here's the knowledge. You share it. You do the next step. You take it to the press. You do we do some co-collaboration in a book, and so on, so that everyone gets the credit that they should have for doing that work. My lessons learned out of this has been that the issues of ownership, use, and protection of indigenous knowledge must be collaboratively and inclusively defined. That systemic reflection is required on ethical issues in multiple contexts. We must have a uniform and fair policy and practice that are going to guide researchers in indigenous communities. And I say, lastly, that self-determination is indeed the key word here. That we need to make sure that indigenous communities understand they have rights and responsibilities, and in taking up those rights, they can actually assert those in a way that they don't have to ask for, support from Indian Affairs or somebody else to give it to them, but rather you assert self-determination in the work that you do with the people that you're working with, arriving consensually at some understanding so that you can actually ensure that your knowledge will be there for your generations of children to come, and that they also, because you have maintained the knowledge, the ceremonies, the traditions, the protocols, that those children also will understand what roles and responsibilities they have as they come up to becoming researchers themselves. And I just say that, because education is my thing, that education is not neutral, and it is socially constructed knowledge that is there, and Eurocentrism has been the core foundation of that knowledge. We must transform that knowledge by learning about decolonization, by taking up our own knowledge and heritage, and developing and imploring you to develop that ethical space for dialogue, for use and protection of indigenous knowledge. And with that, I thank you very much this afternoon for giving me this very long time time to share all of this with you. It's been a great pleasure. I didn't think I'd be able to get through all of that. In fact, I was going to cut it short at different places and just, zoom on through. But I see that I'm going to not only get to put it all in there, but you also get 15 minutes to just have, some space of your own this afternoon. So I thank you very much.
Is the stuff you had on here, is that available?
I can make it available to you if you'd like. If you want to give me your email address, I'll send it to you. I could easily put it up on my webpage and then have it shared with you. But I think probably the simplest way would be then to just give me your email address and I'll send it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, me. That doesn't mean that we can't have some questions. You raise some, there is microphones on the floor, so I don't know whether you want to come up. If there's anybody who wants to make a comment or a question, have a question, they have these nifty little microphones on the side that allow us to continue our dialogue. There's one.
Thank you for the talk, it was really excellent. I have a question. Do you know if there is any initiative of the ethical space dialogue ongoing, in Canada or in the US?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
If there is any ethical space dialogue...
Put your money...
I think that if there is any ethical space dialogue ongoing right now in the US or in Canada, in terms of the intersection between Western and First Nations ethics.
Now, I'm not familiar with the United States. I then open that up to the floor. It is not something that I'm aware of. In Canada, there's certainly been a lot of interaction with the Social Science Humanity Research Council, having developed principles for research in Indigenous communities, although they didn't have it originally. They set out principles, and then after we reminded them that they had to go through the same process of doing research in our communities, and they needed to do that work, they rescinded their principles and did their work, and then came up with them. So in Canada, there are some places where that's gone on, and where there's some wonderful pieces that are coming from it. But I'd have to ask to the audience here whether they are aware of such going on here in the United States. Gee, I hope that's not the case, that there is none. I'll say optimistically there must be some.
Marie, it's Don Peppian. I worked on the reservation, Black Canadian Reservation, for 20 years with my tribe, and I'm now working at Mexico State University, and it makes me realize how much the tribal colleges are really on the cutting edge of knowledge, and the non-Indians are so far behind on that kind of knowledge. But really the question I have is related to publishing. We have a lot of young people that want to join the professoriate, and I've run into those, and they're starting to run into this cultural imperialism that you speak to. That if I'm going to get published, then I have to write to the scientific method and that cultural imperialism, and that doesn't feel good. So I know we've visited a little bit on emails on this, and I know you're talking about the development of some kinds of journals that Native people could use to talk about Indigenous knowledge. Because right now, it's my perception and experience that these kinds of things aren't accepted in any of the other societies' journals. So could you speak to that a little bit?
You're absolutely right. That as soon as you get into publishing, it moves into the realm of economics, and what sells is going to be determining what is put out. And so most of the publishing firms